Charleston County Auditor's Office is busy even during the coronavirus outbreak. Today, I talk one-on-one with Charleston County Auditor Peter Tecklenburg for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Charleston County Auditor Peter Tecklenburg, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's good to see you. It's a new way of interviewing folks, I guess, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Obviously, I know that your office, the Charleston County Auditor's Office, is still busy even during the coronavirus outbreak. And I want to ask a simplistic question, Peter. With the COVID situation affecting the local economy so badly, how has it affected revenues coming into your office?
Well, right now it hasn't affected too much of the revenues that are coming in. It delayed a little bit of the car tax money because for a number of months the state allowed folks to, they took away the penalties, and so some folks took a little longer paying their car taxes. But the majority of the money that comes through my office is going to be through real estate taxes, real property, and through car and boat taxes. And the car taxes are spread out throughout the year. So that's been the bigger puzzle of whether or not that would be affected. All of the property taxes were really due in January. So by and large, luckily, I guess, it wasn't affected too much by this. Some of the folks who may have been already late may have run into some issues that compounded an issue, but the vast majority of the revenue had already been collected. The real question is going to be, does it affect next year's revenue? Because by January, it's going to be interesting. It'll be a better reflection of where we are in terms of this pandemic, of how it's going to affect things. So far, so good. In terms of the money that's coming in my office, I don't deal with accommodations taxes and some of the hospitality stuff. And I know those have taken a much bigger hit. And there are some municipalities in this area that do rely on those a lot more. So I think that's going to be one of the big pieces to this puzzle in terms of revenue that's coming in, on how that's bridged. But for property tax, by and large, everything stayed pretty stable.
And you talked earlier about those revenues. What are the total revenues right now?
Well, there are billions of dollars that are billed out and split up between the municipalities. The Mary and the Treasurer's Office would have a better idea of what the actual collection ratio is right now. I mean, she'll tell you it's typically really high. We're lucky in Charleston and have been lucky in the fact that we have a very stable economy and in fact, a growing economy, and property values are strong. And until recently, and it's hard for me to say it now, but until recently, our employment situation was very strong here too, which all leads to the fact that Charleston had, if not the highest, amongst the highest collection ratios in the state. Which is good because we spend less time going after delinquent taxes and less time selling properties. And I always tell folks, we're not in the business of trying to make more money through fees and through penalties or selling property. The idea is we get the money 100% or as close to 100% of the money that we told the Town of Sullivan's Island or City of Charleston or North Charleston or Charleston County that they were going to get. And that's all we intend to collect, and that's all we intend to distribute, hopefully.
And you talk about those penalties earlier. What are those in total right now?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you talked about those penalties earlier. What are the total penalties so far?
Delinquent tax would have a better idea of what's actually been paid. It's a different department collects it. We do not charge any penalties for car tax bills that are late. And so we haven't been receiving anything in addition on those. And those have been coming in. And we're pretty much on schedule to where we're supposed to be. The cars car purchases are spread out throughout the year. A lot, people buy cars at the end of the year when they go on sale, sometimes beginning of the year when the new model may come out. So we see a little bit of bump sometimes on the new cars, but by and large, it's a steady amount every month. So we haven't seen any real impact because we don't have any months that are so big that December or January are a little bigger, but those months obviously haven't been affected by it.
And I know this might be a very, very, very tricky question, but has your county office received any money from the federal government in COVID aid?
No, not directly. Charleston County has received some, or is receiving some money for supplies and expenses that the county spent that are related, whether it's extra public safety or some medical related expenses. They're more reimbursements than anything else. My office directly has not. We didn't apply for anything, but I think rightfully so. The one of the keys for Charleston County being able to open quicker and to open in a safe manner was to make sure we had the right supplies. And so we've had to put up sneeze guards. We've had to put up the plexiglass. We've had to buy a lot of hand sanitizer and wipes, and of course we've required people to wear masks, and tried to provide everyone in the office with a mask or two. But we also have the disposable masks, and those are obviously things that we weren't anticipating in the budget. And so there have been some reimbursements, or reimbursements are on the way for Charleston County and for some of the upgrades that we've seen. And so I think those are probably very good expenditures that the county has received or is receiving money for. I think there's some other ones out there that are more debatable, but I think it's all what we've seen are public safety and personal health related sort of grants and money to help with these new expenditures.
And let me ask you this too. I don't know if it's directly related to your particular office, but since COVID, has your office had to ask for delay on property value updates?
No. Luckily the assessor's office was already doing most of the hard work before this happened. I think there have been some things that obviously affected their being able to finish the process as quick as they wanted to, but they'll be sending out notifications for reassessment in the next month or so. So the values on the tax bill will be reflected, and they're not going to have to delay reassessment.
And another tricky question here, Peter, but has your office had to ask the state if the county can delay a full reappraisal of properties?
No, sort of like I said, we were lucky in some sense that that this was the timing of this. The majority of the stuff was already in motion, and so they have not had to ask for a delay, which is good because we're required by state law to do a reassessment and reappraise all the properties every 5 years. And so it starts getting a little trickier if you have to delay it, because what happens is the value is still time stamped, and the further you get away from that, the more people are going to say this value doesn't look right. So you want that reassessment to happen as on schedule as possible. So folks, when they look at their tax bill and the appraisal, it still looks reasonable in terms of value.
And this is you talk about obviously the state laws. Can someone apply for, say, a property tax deduction?
Sure, that's a great question. The two, there are three important ones, but the two most important ones are the assessment ratios and legal residence, which is 4%, which is the biggest exemption or the biggest deduction that's possible in South Carolina, and that'll lower your assessment from 6% to 4%, but because of Act 388, it also takes away school funding, which takes another half of your bill away. About half your bill is basically from the school district. So not having to pay for school operating really reduces the bill. If you own your home, and if that's the home you live in, you're eligible for that. You have to apply through the assessor's office. The second exemption that's eligible to anyone, again, on your primary residence, is if you're over the age of 65 or if you're disabled, and you get your homestead exemption, and you apply through my office for that. And you can do it. You can call up my office, 843-958-4200. You can email us, or you can even apply on the website. We have an online section on our website where you can do everything to apply for it. If you're over the age of 65, what it does is it removes $50,000 worth of value from your home. And so instead of taxing you like your home is worth $200,000, we'll tax it like your home's worth $150,000. And so, if you have $1 million home, it doesn't take off as much. But if you own a home that's worth $60,000, we're only going to tax it like it's worth $10,000. And that makes, and the whole point of that is to help, especially to help folks who are on fixed incomes, folks who are older and maybe not working, and folks who can't work because they're disabled. We've done some things on that, and in fact, last year I talked to you. We put a program in where we went out and tried to find a bunch of these folks. Worked with the election commission and got a list of everyone over the age of 65 in Charleston County, and we sent them a letter if they did not have the homestead, saying you very well may qualify for it. And we had thousands of people reply and respond, and we can just, for the first time, actually quantify some of that. Because what happens is, on a fiscal year anyways, from January of 2019 to July of 2019 to July of 2020, we gave back an additional over $400,000 more than the year before. So we found $400,000 to return to taxpayers over the age of 65 in the last year through this program. But the beauty of this is, as soon as you have that exemption, you have it for the rest of your life, or until you move. If you move, you have to reapply. But that will easily equate to millions of dollars in savings for folks out in the public. And the general reason this whole thing exists in the first place is to keep people who are on fixed incomes from losing their homes, or for the taxes from being such a burden on their ability to live on a fixed income. So it's a good thing. In Charleston, we can argue that $50,000 doesn't go where it used to. Each year, there seems to be a bill in the legislature to increase that. I'm certainly in favor of that. But $50,000 still goes a long way in Calhoun County and McCormick County and some of these other places. And the state does reimburse the county and the jurisdictions for every dollar that we have to rebate, or every dollar that we credit to these folks. So ultimately, the state legislature has to decide on that. And the third thing, real quickly, exemption is a more rare exemption, but it's the best exemption. And for folks who have a service-connected disability and have reached 100% military or police or fire, if you have a 100% service-connected disability, you are exempt from taxation in South Carolina on your property, also on 2 vehicles, which means if you did serve our country and you come back with a disability, and it could even be one of these disabilities that over time progresses to 100%. When it gets to 100%, you need to file through the state, where my office is happy to help folks through the process, but the state will qualify you to be exempt from taxes. And so it's a rare thing, but I bring it up all the time because everyone knows someone at church or someone in their family or maybe a neighbor who may qualify or is close to qualifying. And that's part of, we got to look out for each other. And that includes, reminding your parents if they're over 65, or reminding your family members or aunts or uncles, your neighbors, make sure you've applied for that homestead exemption. Or if you know that someone, for instance, in your church, is has served the country and is disabled or may have a disability that's progressively over time becomes like that, becomes 100% disabled, they will qualify for a full exemption. And that exemption also transfers on to their spouse. So if someone does have it and then unfortunately passes away in 5 years, but their spouse lives for another 20, the spouse continues to have tax-free status on that property as long as they own it.
Oh, wow. And you talk about those, obviously those home, the homestead extensions. How many of those requests have you been able to get into your office?
Well, we found about 5,000 folks in Charleston County that we believed were eligible. State law requires that they actually apply. I can't just give it to them. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. We've put something online. We've simplified our form, and we sent them a letter. And we're working on ways to try to get it. Of those nearly 5,000 folks, more than half of them applied and were granted. I can only think of a handful of folks that we reached out to and for whatever reason did not receive it, mostly because there was some other sort of eligibility issue. They didn't own enough of the property, or maybe they owned a different property that they were claiming a residence on. You can't have it on two properties. So I think we have about 25,000 people in Charleston County have Homestead Extension right now. And we added, a couple thousand more to that. So I think we're getting closer to around 30,000 people who currently have that benefit, and we think it's probably slightly more than that. That's why we're out trying to find them.
Right. Yes, sir. And this might be another tricky question, but what is the tax rate right now in Charleston County?
Well, there's the millage rate is it varies from municipality to municipality. The basic way of calculating it is it depends where you live. And Lincolnville and North Charleston are going to have a different tax rate than Sullivan's Island, or folks who are in unincorporated areas, or areas like Kiowa where they do pay for fire protection and they pay for county services and school district, but they pay to the town through different fees that don't come through my office. Generally speaking, most folks are paying between 200 and 300 mils. Equates to about 20 to 30% of your assessed value. So if you have a property that's worth property was worth $100,000, you're at 6% assessment ratio. That means we have an assessed value of $6,000, and then you multiply that by the millage rate, say 25 or 250 mils, which is 25%, and so your tax bill on a 6% $100,000 property would be about $1,500. And if you have a 4% property, obviously we multiply, instead of multiplying by 6, we multiply by 4%. But then on top of that, we take away about 100 mils for the school district, and so a little more than that. And so the difference between a 4% and a 6% bill on that $100,000 property, and I know not a ton of $100,000 properties in Charleston County, but if it was $1,500 at 6%, at 4%, it's going to be about $500. So that's a tremendous difference in the tax rates between the 4% and 6%.
And it might be another tricky question, but has your office been able to complete, say, a tax settlement for this year or this spring so far?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. Have we been able to do a what?
A tax settlement so far.
A tax settlement?
Yes, sir.
But we don't really do anything like a tax settlement. The millage rates, though, from the municipalities are going to be set in, they're being set right now, but they'll be on October's bill. And so we're sort of in the process right now dealing with what the taxes will be in October. Some places will raise their taxes. And in fact, most places will be lowering their taxes because of reassessment. The values have gone up. And since the value, if they needed $100 million before, if they needed $1 million before, what we did was we looked at what the values of the properties were inside their jurisdiction, what the assessment base it was, and then we calculate how much money they needed. And that's how we got the millage rate. So we knew how much taxes they needed to meet their budget. Well, the values have gone up, or they will go up when the numbers come in from reassessment. When those numbers come in, the amount of money they're asking for should be pretty similar to what they were asking for last year. And so with higher values and roughly the same amount of expenditures, the tax rates should come down some. Of course, values went up, tax rates go down, it balances out. So it's hard to predict right now what the actual millage rates are going to be. Most places will be dropping them by a couple mills, and then they may raise it back up by 1 or 2 mills too at the same time. We have a lot of expenses now that I don't think we anticipated this time last year.
And what are those expenses that you're looking at?
Well, I know. I think in general, the municipalities and stuff have a lot more expenses regarding the COVID and staffing issues that come with it. Certainly, the school district is spending millions more dollars on preparations, and who knows what's going to happen with the technology cost of doing some of the remote learning, and even if that works, and whether the school district is going to have to offer additional training and additional maybe tutoring or whatever for the folks who are having a hard time. It's a little uncertain what's going to happen in the next year as we sort of get back on our feet. Generally speaking, government and municipalities, the trash has been picked up. The police have continued to operate. I think the costs associated with all of the supplies have never really been anticipating, and it really depends on what the new protocols are. Spacing people out, some people working remotely, things like that weren't really factored in the way they used to be. So as they're working on that, there may be some additional costs, and they may even find some efficiencies. We found some efficiencies in our office, and I know that a lot of other folks in Charleston County have too. This has sort of been something that's forced us to really look at what we do, and I think, maybe bragging a little bit, but we've always been very proactive in trying to find ways to be efficient and to do things, innovative things in the office while I've been here. We've always been trying to get more stuff online. We've always been trying to come up with ways to save people a trip downtown. Well, the rubber really hit the road when this thing happened, because what we were trying to do is really find a way to keep people from having to come in here. So we've added a number of things on our website. We've learned a lot of things that before we would have said, we can do it on the phone. In a real pinch, we'll walk someone through it. But now we're getting really good at it. We'll do whatever it takes to try to keep people from coming down here. 6 months ago or this time last year, if you called up and said I had a problem with the boat tax bill, we'd probably talk about it a little bit and say, you know what, come on in, we'll figure it out. Now we're much less likely to say, come on in, let's figure it out. We're going to do everything we can to keep someone from having to come in. I still have a number of folks who are working remotely or who are processing deeds and stuff. It's all electronic, so they're able to do that. And we've realized that, we're going to have a discussion at some point about whether or not all these folks really do need to come in every day and sit at a desk in a cubicle to process deeds, and whether they need to be here 5 days a week doing that for 40 hours. So I think in certainly not a lot of positives to this COVID thing. I certainly feel for all the folks who are sick, and so many lives have been lost to this horrible virus. But I think we are adapting, and I think that's important. And I think government has to adapt to this crisis, and we need to learn as much as we can from it.
Charleston County Auditor Peter Tecklenburg, thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. I always enjoy it. Thanks, Quintin. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.